Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, at the end of the day, the best work of the visual effects artist is when you don't even realize that he was there in the first place. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with, once more, as always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals. We pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And, you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do because you're listening. You're listening to the podcast right now. Subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Give us the like. Give us the old 5-star rating. Hit that button. Basically, wherever you get your podcasts. We're over at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, pretty much everywhere. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on the social media, as the kids are calling it these days. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, and the Instagram. Should probably get on the TikTok one of these days, but maybe later. But we're at In the Seats. Where else would we be? Obviously, for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, guess what? We love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. On this episode, we got a good one. We are looking behind the scenes on a new Apple TV Plus show called 5 Days at Memorial, which obviously chronicles or gives a chronicle of what happened during Katrina in New Orleans at the Memorial Hospital and sort of the tragedy therein. And it's a disaster story, but it's a real human story at the same time, and it's just a fantastic piece of work. And if you don't already have Apple TV Plus, I do recommend you go sign up for it now. It's only $5.99 a month, and everything on there is really, really excellent. But we had the unique opportunity of sitting down with visual effects supervisors Eric Durst and Matt Whelan to talk about their work on the show and sort of making disaster as real as humanly possible. And it really dives us into this world that it was literally a hell on earth that these people had to go through. It's just a weird thing, you know. It's one of those things that you watch it and you can't believe it happened, and it really feels like both Eric and Matt did a fantastic job of being true to what happened and making this as real and as genuine as possible. But like I said, please go check out 5 Days at Memorial, which is on Apple TV Plus now. It is a devastating and fantastic piece of TV. But first, enjoy our talks with the visual effects supervisors who helped make that happen, Eric Durst and Matt Whelan, because between you and me, it's a pretty good one. All right, well, obviously, just to kick it off, Matt, Eric, I mean, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate this. And congratulations on the work on the show, man. It was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Now, I mean, I guess for you guys, like, walk me through, I mean, I guess sort of how you lay the groundwork for a job like this, because I mean, obviously you're basing this off real events and you want it to look authentic and sort of genuine. Walk me through that process. So I mean, because I mean, you don't necessarily want to be making, you know, an Avenger-sized tsunami to be hitting the hospital or anything like that. It all has to be sort of within spec.
Right. Well, I think a lot of it was, first of all, to be authentic, because it is something that really happened, and also something that was documented quite a bit. And there's a lot of photography of those events. So the bar was high and what it looked like, and doing it so it wasn't over dramatized, or we didn't fake it like your example of a giant tsunami hitting the hospital. That was not necessarily the case at the lower ninth ward, because that pretty much is what happened. Yeah. But we had to really look at all this material first and discuss how to portray it, and not only what to portray, but how to do it. And Matt did an enormous job, and he'll talk about this in terms of pre-visualization. It's the kind of thing that everyone's trying to wrap their head around how you do this. There's water everywhere. It has to look real. It's not an easy thing to do. And how do you do it in the most efficient and interesting way?
Yeah.
And one of the things that Matt is incredibly talented at is he's able to visualize conversations. He will talk about this. He has a degree in drawing, so he can draw the image or he can do it in 3D, whatever. And then Matt, maybe you can take us through the process of the previs and how that worked with Carlton and John.
Yeah, for sure. So Eric and John and Carlton and I got on pretty early, and we're talking about all the shots, kind of what we wanted to do. And Ramsey as well, our DP, was really open to doing things and in the computer because we had so much planning to do. So yeah, that was a huge part of. I think we ended up doing prevising something like 22 minutes, upwards of 22 minutes of the shows. And to step back to your question a little bit, I did want to mention that Eric turned into a real historian on this one. I don't know if you were before, but it was amazing how much information he kind of mined out of. He introduced me to the idea of you can go back in time on Google Earth, and a few things like that. And so I think, like you're saying, David, it was a huge amount of research. Eric can speak more to it, but yeah.
Just a quick insert into that, Matt, is that on Google Earth, you can go to basically the day before the hurricane, or the day before the levees broke, and then the day after. And so you can go to pretty much anywhere in New Orleans and see what happened, what it looked like the day before and the day after. So that was very informative to us.
That's absolutely wild. And I mean, I've got to ask them, because this is something I'm always curious about. I've got to figure that when you're dealing with so much water, be it sort of on the ground practical or stuff you have to create, it feels like that's an extra layer of challenge, just because water moves so much and it's so alive. Like, can you guys talk a little bit just in terms of making everything in this show feel as real and as in camera as humanly possible?
I think one of the things that we came to terms with early on was how much real water that we would need. And so we built a giant tank, or not we, but the art department with Matthew Davies made an incredible tank outside Hamilton, or in downtown Hamilton. And it was 250 feet by around 150 feet. It was 9,000 liters of water. So it was quite a substantial investment
9 million,
in water. Million, sorry, I said thousand. Million, yes.
Yeah.
9 million liters of water. And we built part of the hospital, but it enabled us to do a lot of the work on the real water itself. And then we extended it from there. And Matt, maybe you can talk about the pre-visualization of that, which helped define what that would look like, how big it needed to be, and what shots we could do in that environment.
Yeah, we planned a ton on this, obviously, but the from the helicopter, we shot this during COVID, which was a real problem, and we had problems getting supplies, building supplies, lumber was out, things like that. There were a lot of behind the scenes issues, so there were delays, and Previs kind of stepped in to help us figure things out before we could get started. So even the directionality that we ended up building the tank at, or the helicopter pad, so that we knew where the sun was going to be on the days we were planning to shoot. We went pretty iterative on that, and dove down into the specs to allow us to do that. But one of the shots I think Eric's kind of referring to is in the very opening of the show. In episode 1, we end up traveling quite a ways to discover the hospital with these people in the boats, the forensic team. And that ended up being a stitch of kind of 3 moves down the tank that we put together, because it wasn't long enough to accomplish, even at 250 feet, it wasn't long enough to accomplish that much movement. So it was just, it was a really amazing process of Eric kind of introduced me to how much we could stitch shots together if we planned it appropriately. And we did that successfully on a few things.
I've got to imagine the pre-visualization process for you guys is paramount, because I mean, I love that you brought up the helicopter pad, because I mean, obviously you can't be putting actors on a rickety helicopter pad. You just have to make it look rickety. And I mean, can you walk me through, I guess, maybe sort of the deconstruction process of something like that? Because I mean, again, this is a thing that was built and was solid and needed to look unstable.
Well, when we first started, we were searching for a building somewhere in Toronto that we could actually put a platform on top of, and then use part of Toronto for New Orleans. We never found that area, and even if we did, there would be restrictions on the helicopters coming and all that. So we ended up at the Flameborough Speedway outside Hamilton, and just made a platform that was, what was it, Matt? It was like 11 feet. It was like 1 inch, 1 inch below the requirement for having people have to have harnesses. So actors could walk around normally. And outside all of that was blue screen, and we were able to basically fabricate everything outside of it. So it was just a solid platform that the helicopters could land on. And then with the everything else, because that was synthetic, when we pull back, you would see how rickety it was and how humble the structure was itself, and how high it was. And we're always trying to, and this is where we took some dramatic license, where we would have shots where it would be actually a certain height that it would be, but it just didn't give the sense of jeopardy. And so we would sometimes make it look a little bit wider or higher than it was, just to expand it out and to get the feeling of it. And so that's how we built it. And Matt, maybe you can talk about the helicopters and the real helicopters that we had on site.
Yeah, the pad that we built was strong enough to be able to support all the actors, but also the helicopters. So we brought in a Black Hawk for the first time in Canada, as far as we know. And the Coast Guard was amazing and came up, because they were such a big part, obviously, of this event. And the believability was such a factor in our decision making, but also the legacy. Somebody, there's a story Carlton tells that one of the pilots of the helicopter was the son of somebody who actually flew the evacuations during the actual events.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think throughout the whole process, that was kind of our goal, was to just try to be as authentic as possible to the people who, out of respect for the people who actually went through this. And some of the pragmatic problems that we ran into, we had that helicopter pad actually meshed up with that staircase that you see in the show.
Right.
But the staircase was built about 20 meters away, and it was a staircase to nowhere, because that was the way we could construct the two. And through visual effects, we merged it all, and then merged it to a third location, which, as Eric was saying, was actually on a rooftop somewhere else outside of Toronto. So those three things hopefully come together seamlessly.
The magic of
story. And we used a lot of photography too. There's some great photography of the people up there, and we would say, and we had a lot of footage as well. So we saw videos of the real people in real time in the real environment, which you rarely have in shows like this. So there was a lot of documentation of what it really was on the day. So you get a sense of what the feeling is that you have to infuse into these shots.
No, I mean, I'm curious for you both, because I mean, I'm curious on how you sort of maintain and keep sort of the creative energy and the creative joy on a job like this up, because I mean, you're not sort of crafting this fantastical world, you're recreating something that's ostensibly horrible. And I mean, is it the problem solving? Is it sort of the working around to try to make things as realistic as possible? Is that sort of the joy that you pull from the moment?
Yeah, I think there's the best visual effects are that we know about. And so that is, we get this sort of interesting reward by having people say, what visual effects were there? I didn't know there were any. And that's sort of the highest compliment that you could get, because you're trying to there are two kinds of films. One where it's obviously you've got monsters and things that are
For
just
sure, yeah.
very clearly a visual effect. But in shows like this, the worst thing would be, oh, that looks like a visual effect, because it wants to look like you were never there. And so that's what the power of the before and afters are. So you see the scene of what we photographed, and then what it became. It's like, oh my God, you did all of that. So that's where it gets pretty exciting.
Well, and I think the Eric and I both took it, like I was saying, so seriously because it was true events. But there's a lot of joy, and we kind of took our lead from working with John and Carlton, who are these, there was so much to learn and so much to do. We had a lot of work on the show, but also I had never worked with such austere filmmakers. A lot of what I'd done in my past was kind of more the other kind of visual effects where things are blowing up or monsters are jumping out. And so it was a really amazing experience to kind of feel like we were doing something that was not only fun, but also worthy or worthwhile.
For sure, for sure. Now, I mean, obviously, the pre-visualization process undoubtedly helps you guys immensely, but I'm kind of curious because you never know until you know, and you've made the shot and you've done it. Like, is there any part in the process when you know you've got it, or is there always have to be a little bit of faith involved when you're setting up some of these elaborate shots?
Well, I think that's where the pre-visualization comes in, and I would say this was pre-visualization, but it was almost like you were doing what's the word? You're going into the future.
Right.
So it was a situation where you have Carlton and John trying to work out the shots, and Matt is so good at very quickly moving the cameras around and building something that wasn't there and needs to be there. So they were able to visit in advance, months in advance, the set, and really feel like you're standing there and make judgments on, well, we should go this way or that way, or if we go to the right, we need to build more of a set here, etc. And then when we got on the set, actually, it was somewhat mechanical because we'd already been there. And I think that's the big benefit of pre-visualization is that being able to do a little time travel and be there on the day way before the day happens.
Yeah, it was a little spooky when we first walked onto the set and we were like, we've been here before. Like, it felt so familiar at that point, both the ER ramp and the helicopter pad, that it was a little bit, it was a very strange feeling. I'll say that.
No, I mean, for you guys going forward, I mean, obviously people have seen the show. It's garnering such fantastic responses. I mean, and I think you're right. I mean, I think the greatest probably compliment for you guys is people going, oh my God, it didn't look like there were any effects at all. And in this show, it doesn't. And I mean, how important is it for you guys to be a part of projects like this where not only we're retelling stories that were tragic, but are still important to hear, but at the same time, are these incredible sort of crafts from guys like you to be able to immerse not just audiences, but almost quite literally actors into these moments, but keeping them safe at the same time.
Yeah, I think one thing that just in terms of visual effects and safety, there are a lot of things you can do in visual effects that back in the day, a long time ago, people would actually have to jump out of airplanes into a postage stamp mat or something like that, or something like that. And we now overtake it with digital doubles and things like that. So I don't think there was anything really in this show that caused danger other than the helicopters, just the dangerous environment of that, potential dangerous environment of that. But we were able to, get shots, obviously, that you could never get beforehand, like the great shots that UPP did. UPP is a great visual effects company in Prague, and they were able to visualize the helicopters coming on the helipad in a wide shot, seeing all of New Orleans and seeing it completely flooded. And that was done entirely digitally. We did drone work to get a reference of what the environment was like, but a lot of the structures are still there, but a lot of them were not there or have gone. And so we were able to recreate those kind of environments. So to recreate scenes that have historic nature that help visualize things that no matter how much media was done during Hurricane Katrina, we never had shots of the Superdome being ripped apart. We never had photography of the levees breaking in the lower ninth ward and seeing the immense power of the water that basically wiped out the whole area close to and many blocks from the lower ninth ward and people in houses and all of that. You never really saw that. And so we were able to visualize what people sort of saw in their minds, but we could able to now show it visually.
No, I mean, this show really does immerse us in what, quite frankly, the hell of that experience was. And I mean, I think you guys do a great job with this. And I mean, just to start putting a bow on this, and this is a dumb question, but it's one I always like to ask. Like, was there something that in your younger days you saw or got to take part of that made you want to get into this business, especially, you know, when it comes to VFX? Because I mean, I'm always curious to find out sort of those light bulb moments for people and their influences, sort of from back in the day, as it were.
You go first.
Well, I think for me, my dad was a painter and taught painting, and so I was always introduced to visualization of things, and so I always wanted to visualize worlds. And so I went to Cal Arts. I was an animator, and so I would do things like that, really with just simple pencil drawings and very austere kinds of filmmaking, but then develop it further and further and further. And I've always liked artistic work as well as technological work, and this is a blend of the two. So I don't think there was a light bulb moment. I think it was a combination of many things, and more like setting you on a path and then you just riding on that path for as far as it can take you.
Yeah, and for me, I was 11 or 12 when Jurassic Park came out in '93, and that was like I didn't think I could actually do that. So I ended up going to school for classical animation as well. Eric and I share that. I went to Sheridan College in Toronto or Oakville, and you know, I thought I could do cartoons. That seemed like a way I could work in movies. But then I ended up being nerdy enough on computers that the crossover of drawing and technology, like Eric's saying, just became a job. And I feel really lucky that I'm able to kind of do both in a way that pays all right.
But I mean, honestly, guys, with this show, you guys have done something that I really think is amazing, because it puts us into this world and it doesn't let go of us, and it makes us like scared and dirty and sweaty like these people really were. And again, in watching it, people, you know, the best compliment, like you said, is not even knowing you guys had to do work at all. And you guys do such fantastic work on this. And I mean, it's such an immersive experience. And just, again, congrats on the work. And thank you both so much for the time today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Amazing to be part of. Thank you. Thank you.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.